Good morning. I'm Fraser Douglas, the avid tent camper.
When Ava and I go camping, we usually set up a kitchen canopy along with our tent. Our canopy stands about 8 feet high and provides a covered area for cooking, eating, dressing, reading, playing games, and relaxing on hot sunny days and rainy days. In addition to blocking the sun and the rain, our canopy helps to block the wind, provides a small amount of warmth on cool evenings, protects our equipment from dewfall, and protects our food from leaves and other falling debris. The only times we may not deploy our canopy is during short 1 or 2 night camps in good weather. After arriving at our campsite, we must decide where to pitch our tent and where to set up our canopy. Ideally, we have found a large, level, and shady campsite with an elevated tent pad or crushed stone surface. And ideally, the fire ring is located near the front corner of the campsite, and the table can be moved to any position we want. First, we must determine the best place to pitch our tent. If an elevated tent pad is available, we pitch it there. If a tent pad is not provided, we try to position the tent on high ground as far back into the campsite as possible and as far away from the fire ring as possible. Then we determine the best place to set up our canopy. In most campgrounds, we try to set it up directly in front of our tent, about 2 or 3 feet away. In bear country, we must set it up several yards away from the tent. After determining the best position for our canopy, we must determine the best side of the canopy for adding the lean-to sidewall. When our tent and other obstacles do not interfere, we try to place the sidewall on the west edge of the canopy to block the wind and provide afternoon shade. Now let me describe the materials that you'll need to make this kitchen canopy. First, you'll need 2 8x10 polyethylene tarps that can be purchased in department or hardware stores for about $10 each. One tarp will serve as the top, and the other will serve as the sidewall of the canopy. A few years ago, we thought about using larger 10x12 tarps, but decided that the 8x10 tarps provided plenty of room and packed into a smaller space. You'll need 3 8-foot poles and 1 6-foot pole. Now, these poles can be made from saplings if you have access to private property, or they can be made from 2x2 wood stock that can be purchased in home improvement stores, or you can buy stainless steel poles for about $10 each, or aluminum poles. We use Eureka nesting backpacking poles because they can be packed into a small space, but they cost almost $30 each. You'll need 8 10-foot guy lines made from 3mm utility cord or 450 paracord. These guy lines should have leverage loops and taut line hitches at the top end and overhand loops at the distal end. You'll also need 2 5-foot guy lines made from 3mm utility cord or 450 paracord, plus 2 carabiners. These guy lines should have taut line hitches at the top end and overhand loops at the distal end, and they will be used to secure the bottom edge of the sidewall. You'll also need 10 guy line stakes. We prefer these 10-inch nail stakes that are sold in department stores with plastic tips on the top. You'll also need a baton or mallet to drive in the tarp stakes. Now let me explain how we set up this campsite and kitchen canopy in the Lake Powhatan campground in the Pixta National Forest near Asheville, North Carolina. The first step in setting up our tarp is to lay our top tarp out on the ground in the position that we want it. Now, we've already set up our tent, but we have not staked it down yet. And so after we get our tarp set up, we're going to move the tent so that it is right close to that far edge right there. Now, this campsite has a concrete picnic table that we cannot move, and so we have to work around it. And so we're going to put the back wall of the tarp along the edge right there where you see the blue sidewall tarp. And you'll see that when we get it stretched out, we're going to be pretty close to the fire ring where we will be cooking a few meals on this trip. Well, we've got our stakes in the ground and our guy lines attached to the stakes. On the open edge, our guy lines are going to be parallel with each of the two corner edges. So there's one edge, and if you just come straight down, there's a stake for it. Here's the second edge, and if you come across, there's the stake for it. Now we do that for both of the open corners, which will be those two corners right there. And then for the two wall corners, we actually place the stakes side by side, a little bit on each side of the pole. So the two guy lines are going to be pulling that edge out away from the center. When we hook up the back wall, it will pull the tarp in that direction. Okay, we're ready to pick the tarp up. To help me, Ava is going to stand at that edge. That's the edge where we'll be attaching the wall. And she's going to be holding that edge while I put the two poles in these two front corners. Once I get those poles in the front corners, then I'm going to come back and put the poles in the back two corners. Here's how we set up each corner. First of all, we insert the pole tip through the tarp grommet, and then we put the one loop from the leverage loop of each guy line over the top of the pole tip. When we need to adjust the tension of the guy line, you'll see that we just slide down, and there is a taut line hitch right there, and we can slide that up or down in order to make the guy line tighter or looser. And you'll notice there's a taut line hitch over on that guy line also. Those two white ropes at the top are my leverage loops for these two guy lines. Well, we've got the tarp in the basic position. Notice this corner that's close to me is the low corner, and the back corner there is 8 foot high, and those two corners are 8 foot high. And now we're going to attach the back wall to those two corners right there. And once we do that, we're going to adjust everything and make it tight. Well, we've got our tarp set up, and we've got our tent in position. You can see we've got our back wall pulled out, and now we're going to set up our cooking area under that back wall. And then we got to put the rain fly on the tent.
and stake the tent down, and then we can start setting up our sleeping quarters.
We use the carabiner and taut line hitch to secure the bottom corners of the back wall.
Well, our camp is set up now. We've got our tent set up. It's kind of a warm day, so we've got the sides rolled up. We've got a little table where we can eat or play games here. We've got our tarp set up. There's our kitchen area. Ava's sitting over there at the picnic table.
So now we're ready to relax and cook a nice meal. You can find many more useful suggestions for comfortable tent camping in my book, Basic Tent Camping, on my website, www.basictentcamping.com, and on my Facebook page, Modern Tent Camping.
Remember, take more trips, travel further, visit more attractions, and save money. Go tent camping.